All right. Thank you, everybody. It's Greg Warner here, CEO and founder of MarketSmart. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am absolutely ecstatic that I've got my friend Jeff Schreifels here from Veritas Group, and he's going to teach us how to think about major gifts. And it's something we all really need desperately. And Jeff is an expert, so you're going to learn a lot today. Just a quick background on Jeff and also some points about what's going to happen today. First, I'm going to introduce Jeff. He's going to provide for you tons of information that it's going to benefit you. At the end of his presentation, of course, we want you to ask questions throughout. But before we get to the question and answer session, I'm going to do just a little quick kind of I don't want to call it a sales pitch, but a lot of people are always wondering what the heck does MarketSmart really do, and how do we help you? So I'm going to jump into that for maybe a minute or two, maybe three, and then we'll get into the questions and answers. And I think you'll want to stay for that because that's always a lot of fun, and you can kind of play stump the expert. Um, all right, so with that, Jeff Schreifels is senior partner at Veritas Group. He's been working in the nonprofit sector for almost 30 years, first as a development director at several nonprofits before joining the Domain Group as the agency's senior director, helping that group's largest clients. Now he's leading Veritas Group and he's helping nonprofit organizations develop highly effective major donor programs. He's recognized as a leader in the field by scores of nonprofit executives and fundraising thought leaders in and around the world, and his blog is widely read. I know it's maybe even tens of thousands of people that get that. The combined annual major gift income of the agencies that Veritas serves is in excess of $500 million. So suffice to say that Jeff knows about major gift strategy, and I'm thrilled to have him here with us today. I think you're going to really learn a lot. So with that being said, I'm going to make the transfer to Jeff, or my assistant Alvin will be doing that for me. So
That
here,
sounds good.
yes, please help me, Alvin. All right, here we go.
All right. Okay. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, indeed.
Awesome. All right. Welcome. Hey, thanks, Greg. I don't think it has anything to do with my looks of why this is so popular. I think that it has more to do with the fact that nonprofits around the country really want help in major gifts, and it's why we've been so successful as a company because there is such a need out there to get good information, management, consulting, ideas about how to do this work better. And so I think that's why it's popular. Let's let's talk. I just want to talk a little bit briefly. Okay, that's me. Now you can all visualize who's actually talking to you today. I'm Jeff Schreifels, and like Greg said, I've been in this work for almost 30 years, and I absolutely love it. I started, right out of college by accident, which a lot of people my age got their start in fundraising. No one really planned to do that, and I got to work as a development director for 8 years for nonprofits, and then worked on an agency for 12 plus years, and then my business partner Rich and I came together in 2009 to work with nonprofits specifically on major gift programs. And we've been having the time of our life over the last 7, 8 years now, really helping organizations get their act together when it comes to major gifts. And it's been a lot of fun. So I'm really excited to be here today. Hang with me, ask good questions, and we'll talk about those later. But let's talk about what we're going to do today. So the first thing is I want to make sure you understand what the proper structure for major gifts is within development and where it should sit. That's one thing. I also want to describe and help you understand the 7 pillars of a successful major gift program. And these pillars are absolutely critical to be there to make sure that you're successful in major gifts. Without these 7 pillars, it's just not going to happen. And then with that, I want you to be able to assess your own nonprofit's culture philanthropy. And I like to focus on this because you can have all your pillars down, but if you don't have a culture within the organization that embraces philanthropy and fundraising, it's going to make your job so much harder. So I want to ask you a few questions about where you think your organization is and get you thinking about how you yourself could be the change that helps that culture come about. The first thing I want to do, though, is talk a little bit about a problem. And I think all of you know about this, and that is donor retention. We have a problem across the board with our nonprofit organizations of retaining donors. So we bring new donors in, half of them go out, at least half of them leave every year, and we've got to bring in new ones to always make that happen. The problem is that that's always been happening when we've had, new donors come in, old donors are coming out at that kind of rate, 50, 60%. The problem, though, is with major gifts, it's almost the exact same as we see with $10 and $25 donors. And for us, that is just awful, because if you have that kind of attrition with major donors, you're really losing a ton of money every year. This little slide I have up here right now looks at a donor attrition benchmarks that we've looked at with 33 national organizations by cum giving level. And I won't go into great detail, but you can see that even from the $1,000 to $10,000 donors per year, we're seeing a tremendous amount of drop-off year over year for their giving. So we're losing just tons of revenue every year. And when we do a donor assessment, we see this kind of attrition across the board. So not only are we losing donors, but we're losing value, what we call value attrition over year. And this doesn't have to happen. We know that if you're really working your caseloads correctly in your portfolios of major donors, that we can shore up that donor value attrition and increase donor retention. So this is a problem across the industry. Now, I want to show you just an example of one organization. This was a large national organization that we did a donor assessment on. And by the way, later on at the end of this, if you want to have your own donor assessment, we do this for free. So you'll have that opportunity to raise your hand and say you want that. But right here, I want to show you in year one, we looked at any donor that gave $1,000 plus cum in any one of the last 4 years. So year one, these were all the donors that gave $1,000 plus cum. That equaled $8 million for this organization. So it was a large organization. But this happens in medium-sized and small organizations. By the next year, those same donors only gave $4.6 million, or we lost 42% of their value in that 1 year. So when we sat down with this organization and we looked at those individual donors, so let's look at donor number 3. We said, okay, this donor gave $72,000 in year one, and they have not given since. Tell us the story behind this donor. What happened? And no one could give us the story. No one knew what someone who gave $72,000 didn't know why they couldn't give the next year. And that is what's going on in major gifts across the country in different organizations. And this is what we want to try to help work with you on so that you can do this better and know what the story is. That's the key. Like, we know that some donors are going to go away, but do you know the story behind that donor? That is the absolute key, because that would tell us that you are stewarding and cultivating these donors correctly. Now, I want to show you this because I wanted you to know where this money is coming from major donors. So you can see right here, that right now, between the boomers and the matures, those matures are those 75 and older folks, and then the boomers are between 52, 53 years old and 64 years, and up to 70s. Um, these are the folks that are giving the major gifts. It's not the millennials, but pretty soon it will be Generation X. In fact, I'm going to be 52 next month. I'm the first year of Generation X, 1965. Anyone born between 65 and I think it's 80 or so is Generation X. That's me. We're coming up, and we're soon, when we hit 55, that's when we'll start having more disposable income to start giving major gifts. But right now, it's the boomers and matures. So I know there's a lot of information and talk about the millennials and going after those folks, and that's true. You should treat them well, but you're not going to spend a ton of time on them because they're not giving major gifts right now. They don't have it. Now, this is kind of I know it's not the best slide for us, but I want to make it's important because I want to make sure you look at major gifts and where in the structure of your development department lies major gifts. So on the left-hand part of the screen, you can see that on the top there it says 80% of the effort. The objective is really helping others secure resources. And then 20% of the effort for the organization is around helping the organization mind the brand. So remember that. So let's focus on the 80% here. We've got this broken out between individuals and institutions. So with individuals, you've got direct marketing or your annual fund, major gifts, and planned giving. This is one group, individual donors. And then you have institutions. So you have people working on corporations and businesses and foundations. These two should be separated between individuals and institutions. And then you have your support services with donor care, program, analytics, your website, all of this stuff. All of these people in this 80% of the effort here are focusing on relationships with donors to make sure that we're causing mutually satisfying transactions. That's it. The other 20% of the effort in the organization is really around the public relations, events, marketing, branding. All of that is about creating positive and memorable impressions. So if we want to look at where does major gifts fit, it fits under that 80% of the effort under individuals. That's where we want to see major gifts be a part of. So I want us to step back, and before we get into the 7 pillars, I want to ask you and kind of inspire you a bit to let you understand that what is this major gift work really all about? And I've got this beautiful bridge here that I one day want to go. I heard this in Sri Lanka. I want to be on this bridge. But pretend that you yourself are this bridge, because as a major gift fundraiser, a development director, executive director, you are a bridge. If you take your left hand and put it out and grab the hand of your donor, and on your right hand, grab the need that you're addressing every day. What you're doing every day is that bridge that brings that donor and the need together. That's what you get to do every day. So not only are you helping this donor, change the world, but then you're also alleviating a great suffering or some kind of need in the world. So I really believe that as the bridge between that, you have the greatest job in the world. You really do. How many people get to do that every day, get to bring a donor who wants to change the world and a need that needs to be alleviated and bring those together? So I just want you to think about that and feel good about what you do every day. It's unique, it's special, it's hard work, but it is amazing that you get to do this every day. All right. Now, I want to move into the 7 pillars of a major gift program. And again, these are absolutely essential. And you're going to think, well, some of these are really basic. But they're absolutely the essentials that you have to be successful in major gifts. So, pillar number 1 is, do you have the right caseload of donors? And what I mean is, do the donors that you have, that you're cultivating and you're stewarding, are they the right ones? Well, On a full-time major gift officer, someone who's working full-time, they can only handle 150, what I'd say, qualified donors. These are donors that have raised their hand in some way that you know they want a deeper relationship with you. They like the idea of you calling them. They like the idea of you visiting them, that they're engaged with you. 150. So we know that over the years, to get 150 qualified donors on one full-time caseload, you need about 450 donors to actually make that happen, because only about a third of the donors on your file that qualify for a major gift or become a major donor. So let's say they gave a gift size in the amount that would qualify them for a major gift, only a third of them want a deeper relationship with you. And that's very important to know, because it gets disastrous when we have major gift officers who have 3, 4, 500 donors on a caseload. There's no way you can possibly cultivate and steward these donors effectively with having that many donors on your caseload. Now, you might say, well, we might only have 100 donors who have given $1,000 a year per year. Well, that's fine. With that 100, you're going to end up probably with about 30, 35 major donors. I just want you to realize that only a third of the donors that are on your caseload or in your database who've given a dollar figure to qualify them as a major donor want a deeper relationship. Now, once you have those 150, or whatever number it comes out, if it's 30, I don't care if it's 10 donors, you're going to want to tier those donors A, B, and C level. And this is important because you only have so much time, and not all donors are equal. And so by tiering your donors A, B, and C level, you're going to be able to allocate your time correctly on the right donors. So here's what that looks like. So you can see the tier A and B and C. On this one, there's 150 donors, and you know that A is going to basically take half of your time, all your A donors. And in this case, in this scenario, there's only 10 donors that constitute A level. Half your time are going to be on those 10 donors, because you know the outcome is going to be 6- and 7-figure gifts. So you're going to have very personal strategies. You're going to be very strategic in your messaging. This is how it works with your portfolio. Then you can see 40 of them are B's, and then 100 of them are C's. And you're going to go from less personal all the way up to very personal, tactical to very strategic. And then you can see what the overall outcomes are of B and C. Is you're trying to upgrade, you're trying to retain and repeat giving throughout all of this. But you know on your A level, this is where the donors that are going to make the most net revenue for you. Here's another way that we're going to look at it. So in this case scenario, you've got out of 150 donors, 21 donors who are A level, 64 that are B, and 65 that are C. And you can see the dollar values that each of those tiers give. So the A level, in this case, is basically almost bringing in 50% of the total revenue of $1 million. So this is a $1 million caseload with 21 donors giving $480,000 a year on this. So you can see from this why you would want to spend half your time with those A-level donors, because that is where most of your revenue is coming from. And so this is where you're going to spend your time. This is where you're going to spend your energy. A-level donors, and then down to B, and then C. You don't forget about those B's and C's, but you know that half of your day, so that means 20 hours a week. If you're working full-time on this, 20 hours a week are on those 21 donors. Okay, pillar number 2. We want to create goals for every donor on your portfolio. So let's say we've now qualified your donors. You've got 150 donors, and I'm just using that scenario. So you've got a full caseload, 150 major donors. You will go through a process that you need to put a goal to every donor. And why do you want a goal? You want a goal because it's something that you will attain if you put it down on paper. We know that if there is no goal, that more often than not, you're not going to meet it. And if there is a goal, we know that between 85 and 95% of the time, you're going to make that goal or even exceed it. So it's very important that you go through a process of looking at creating goals for every donor. Um, so let's move to number 3. But by the way, there's opportunities at the end. You can go to our website and we have tons of white papers, and we have a white paper on how do you actually do goal setting, step-by-step process for you. So if you don't know how to do that, we have that process for you. I won't go into great detail because we don't have that much time, but just know that we have an answer to all of that, a very detailed plan for that for you. So pillar number 3 is a plan for every donor. So you have a goal, and then you have to have a plan for how are you going to achieve this goal. So this is just an example of taking 2 donors where you have the goal, you know what their passion and interest, their communication preferences, and then every month you've got at least one touch point that you're setting them up for an ask, you're thanking them, you're reporting back the impact of their gift, you're acknowledging different milestones in the relationship with the donor. All of these things you're doing constantly. So you can see that if you had 150 donors, how hard that work is. I mean, you're doing a lot of different things every day for these donors if you're actually following this kind of a plan. Each plan has to have these things to make it successful. You've got to know the donor's passion and interest. You've got to know their communication preference. Then you have a revenue goal, and then frequent touches, the plan for how you're going to achieve that goal. Now, one thing about the goals, another thing that we do with all of our clients that we work with all the MGOs that we help manage, not only do we put a revenue goal, but then we cash flow those goals throughout the year. And we do that because it's an added management approach and a tool for us to be able to track how well MGOs are doing during the course of the month. And if you're a manager, if you're an executive director, you'll want to make sure that this happens because this is really what helps keep people accountable to those goals. So a plan. So along with this is how it looks like when you're working a plan over the course of the year. So you're always identifying the interests and passions of a donor. You're building that relationship. Then you're moving over and you're identifying problems so that you can address them with the donor and invite them to do something about it. Then you're asking the donor, and the donor gives you a gift. And that cycle keeps happening. And then in between all of that stuff is the stuff in the middle, the blue. You're sending them, you made a difference pieces. That's what a YMAT is. You made a difference. You're reporting on the impact to that donor. Then you're doing a touch point. You might be, you know something about their passion and interests, and you send them a little article on something. Or you send them a birthday card or something that is a touch point to that donor. And then you're sending them more you made a difference pieces. And that cycle, both on the outside and on the inside, is happening constantly with a donor. That's what it looks like. All right, so pillar number 3, a plan for every donor. We're still working on this pillar number 3. This part is packaging your program. And this is important as it's part of your overall plan because you need to know the passion and interest of your donors because you've got to match those up with the programs and projects you have that are changing the world. So the problem we run up against when we MGOs is they say to us, well, we don't really have a bunch of projects and programs to fund. We're just supposed to raise money for general operating funds. We're saying, you can't do that. Yeah, some donors might want to give to general operating, but what you need to do is package your entire budget, what you do, that includes all your overhead, and into buckets that talk about exactly what you're doing every day. So in other words, you have all these projects and programs and you got to include the overhead in that. You need to go through a process with finance, with program people to come back with what I would say is a virtual file folder of projects and programs at different dollar handles that you can present to donors to inspire them to give. Again, we have a white paper on this, and if you go to our website, you'll be able to get that and know exactly the process for how to do that. But it's absolutely important that you package your programs and your projects so that donors can get inspired by them. And then once you've got the program, you've got to have a very compelling offer for them to buy off on. And to have a great offer, you need a compelling need, you need a believable solution, and then ultimately that's what will lead to donor adoption. But the compelling need and then the believable solution is absolutely necessary with part of your projects and programs that you have. Otherwise, a donor will not adopt that. They're not going to see the value in it. So it's absolutely critical that in your planning, that this is part of your planning as well, that you've got a whole ton of projects and programs that you can go to your donors with. Okay, now we're on pillar number 4. Pillar number 4 is asking for support. And you're like, wait, are you kidding me? Asking for support? Of course. Why would that be a pillar? Let me tell you something. Richard and I have been working with organizations for a long time, and you would not believe how many major gift officers or development directors or executive directors have never sat across the table from a major donor and asked them face to face for a gift. It's amazing. Here we're asking people to want to give over, making a huge investment of $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, $100,000, or $1 million, sometimes even more. And they've never actually done that by sitting across the table and asking a donor, looking them in the eye and asking them for that gift. And so there's all kinds of reasons for that. Fear being number one, but not being prepared, all kinds of reasons, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But this is absolutely essential. If you're going to do major gifts, you cannot rely on just doing nice things for the donor, thanking them, sending them little things. I've known so many MGOs who've gotten by sending little gifts at the holiday season, thanking them, calling up to see how they're doing, and then they rely on direct mail for the donor to make their gift, or they just assume that the donor is going to mail them in a check, call them up and say, hey, I think I'm going to give you $10,000. It doesn't happen that way. First of all, donors want to be asked to give. They need to give, and they want to be asked. You get to do that. It's a great thing to do. So, pillar number 4, you got to know your donor and then make the ask. Here's some common mistakes that we see in making the ask. Number 1, where there's no match to donor's passion and interests. So an MGO will, because they're being pressured perhaps by leadership or whatever, they're being said, yeah, we got to raise money for this project. So go up to your donors and ask them for that. Well, a donor might not want to give that because they're not passionate about that specific thing. But too often we see MGOs or development directors asking donors for gifts that they're not passionate about, and then they wonder why the donor says no. A classic example of this was a few years ago. I had an MGO call me and he said, I got to tell you this story. I just absolutely blew this, Jeff, but I want to tell you the story so you tell others not to do this, and I learned from my mistake. So I thanked him for, letting me in on a mistake that he made. But so he was working for a hospital foundation, and this hospital was putting on another wing of the hospital to really care for the elderly in the last few years of their life. And so there was all this excitement about we've got to, we've got to do a capital campaign. I want you to get a lead gift from one of our best donors. So the major gift officer looked at his list, who was the best donor, who'd given the most, and he set up a meeting with the donor with the CEO of the hospital. They go into the meeting, and the guy makes an eloquent pitch. Both the CEO and the MGO did a great job. And the donor at the end of it says, "Wow, that was really impressive." And then there was a pause. However, you should know that my passion lies with children. And, you know, I want to do things for kids. Now, it's a great project, but that's just not what I'm interested in. And the MGO was absolutely embarrassed because he brought the CEO in. The CEO was like, "What is going on?" Goes back to the office and sure enough does some more homework, looks at what did the donor actually give to, and sure enough, it was all towards children. All he did was look at his top donors and recognize that this was one of their top donors and really gloss over the fact, didn't look at what was this guy really interested in? What was he passionate about? So you've got to have that. Other mistakes, relationship of trust is not built. A lot of times, MGOs are pressed to get money right away, to go after the money without developing a relationship. Major donors have to know that they can trust you. You can't just go in and have a meeting and say, "Can you give me $1 million?" It's just not going to happen. They don't know you. They may not be sure about the organization. And they're not going to invest that kind of money if they don't know you. So you've got to build trust. The ask is not put into a context of a larger vision. So I've seen this a lot where an MGO will ask somebody for $10,000 or $20,000, and the MGO was like, "Well, how does this fit into the big picture?" So you want this particular thing, but you know, what's the greater good? You've got to be able to know that. The MGO is more interested in getting the money than fulfilling the donor interest. This happens all the time. Either the MGO is motivated to just get the money because it looks good for them, or that they're getting tons of pressure from leadership to go after the money, versus actually taking the time to figure out what the donor's passion and interest is in. And that's a huge, huge problem we have in major gifts. You've got to know what their passion and interest is, the donors. It's not about you trying to get money for a project. It's about fulfilling the need of the donor to make a difference in the world. That's what you're about. That's why I started with that whole bridge. That bridge was there to remind you that that's what you're doing every day. You're bringing the donor together with that need. Another problem is the ask is too low. This happens all the time. This is also where we don't really know the donor, and so we go in, and I had this happen with one of the MGOs we were working with. This MGO said, "Hey, I think I should ask for $1 million," and we were like, "Actually, I think this guy that you're going to approach should be somewhere in the $5 to $10 million range." And he's so adamant about, "No, I don't want to go that high. I think that would be offensive. I want to go in for $1 million." So he flies all the way out to San Francisco from New York, sits down with the donor, and does the $1 million ask. Sure enough, the donor says, "It's a great project. However, when you have something that I can make a bigger impact on, come back to me with something bigger." So $1 million to that donor was too low. You've got to know who your donor is. It could be a $10,000 that you're asking $1,000 from. Know who your donor is and make sure the ask is appropriate. In fact, I've never seen a donor be offended by asking too high. They can always go lower. But once you hit low, it's very rare that they'll want you to come back and ask for more. The MGO might not be prepared to offer terms in payment of a pledge. So an MGO might say, "Hey, could you do $100,000 over for this project?" And the major donor would say, "Well, could I give that over a 5-year period?" And you have to be able to be prepared to say, yes, I can do that, or how about if we did that over a 3-year period, or know the project well enough to be able to say, yeah, I think we can do that. That's something that donors want to know. Um, this is a big one. The ask is packaged too intellectually and philosophically, so it's totally void of emotion and passion. We see this all the time in major gifts where we see these case statements that they're going to hand to donors, and we read these case statements and they are so boring. They've got all the facts and figures. They've got, here's what we're trying to solve, here's what we're trying to do, and here's the outcomes of all of these things. But there's no story. There's nothing that tugs at your heart. And we get this idea that somebody that's going to give $1 million gift or $100,000 gift, somehow they are not emotionally connected like somebody who would get a direct mail package and give $10. It's absolutely not true. Donors all give from their emotions and their own passions. We've got to tap into those. So anytime you're soliciting a donor, that has to be a part of your solicitation. Whatever it is, it has to reach and touch that donor's heart. The other one is that the MGO is not prepared to handle objections. This is another big one. Whenever we work with an MGO before they go and solicit a donor, we work with them to practice all the objections that could come up from that donor so that they're able to handle those and know exactly what to say or how to talk about them, because donors will have some objections. An objection doesn't mean a no. It just means I might be able to do this, but I need to know more information. And you as the MGO or executive director or development director need to know how to answer those. So those are some common mistakes of asking. All right, let's step back. Pillar number 5 here, thanking donors. Again, use like, this really is a pillar, thanking donors? That's so obvious. Let me tell you something. This is something we do not do well. We're great at getting the check and putting it right into the bank. It probably takes 2 or 3 seconds for us to do that. The problem is the way that we thank donors. So somebody gives you a $10,000 gift, you're not just going to send them a paper receipt thanking them. That's, it's got something written that you'd send a $10 donor. You need to know, not only do you need to get a thank you out quickly, but it needs to be appropriate. So maybe it means that your executive director, they have to call them and say, I just want to thank you so much for that gift. Or it's a handwritten note by the development director. Or it's some type of recognition you need to do as well, depending on what you feel the donor is going to want. But appropriate thank you, a speedy thank you is absolutely essential, or the gift's not going to come in again. Thanking donors is absolutely a pillar because, one, donors expect to get thanked. They expect to get something in the mail that says, thank you for your gift of XYZ. They're not going to expect the type of thank you that you're going to call them, that you're going to send a personal note, that you're going to do something special. They will always remember that kind of a thank you. So for major gifts, that's what you've got to be creative with and work on. Now that leads us to pillar number 6, reporting back. So you thank the donor profusely, you do that in the right way, but the thing that will happen, that you'll never get another gift again if you don't report back the impact of that gift that donor made. It is absolutely essential that you report back how that gift made a difference once you get that gift from a donor, and that it's an appropriate time period. So I got to tell you the story. A couple of years ago, I was working with the CEO of a nonprofit. It's about a $5 million, $10 million nonprofit. And the executive director, Bob, he was having breakfast with one of his donors at a diner. And he looked over and he saw that there was another one of his donors who happened to be having breakfast at the same time. So when he was done, he went over to the other donor and said, "Hey, how's it going, John? It's great to see you. And what's happening? Tell me about your family." And just trying to um, do your regular checking thing. And in that little bit of time that he was with John, he noticed John was kind of a little bit cold towards him. So Bob, being pretty intuitive and kind of put it right out there, he said, "John, are you okay? Is something wrong? I just feel like there's something not right." And John, he kind of sheepishly said, "Well, I feel funny bringing this up, but about 6 months ago, I gave you a pretty sizable gift, and I heard nothing on what it did. I got a receipt letter, but thanking me, so for my taxes and stuff, but I have no idea what happened with that gift. It's been like crickets from you guys." And Bob was like, "Oh my gosh, you got to be kidding." And the guy said, "Well, it was a $20,000 gift." And Bob was like, "Oh my gosh, for this group, $20,000 gift was amazing." So he goes, "I'm gonna go find out what happened." So he goes back to the office and he gets in there and he says to his staff, "Hey, I just got back from breakfast and I saw John." And he said he made a $20,000 gift 6 months ago. I never heard about this. And the staff kind of looks at each other and like, "Yeah, well, yeah, you know what? You're right. He did give that $20,000 gift. And we forgot to tell you about it. We were right in the middle of a bunch of stuff and it got lost. And we never followed up on it." So Bob said, "We've got to put together, a report, what happened with the gift." So he did all of that. Then he calls the donor and he says, "John, I'm really, really sorry. I found out that it, essentially got lost in the thick of all the busyness that we were, and we just didn't follow up, and I'm really, really sorry. And this would never happen again." And I just, basically he fell down on his sword. And the donor says to him, "Bob, I don't want you to feel so bad because when I gave you that gift of $20,000, I also gave 8 other organizations the same gift. And I only heard back from one of them. One. And it was from a little soup kitchen, a soup pantry in West Virginia that was run by an 80-year-old woman. And she wrote him an 8-page handwritten note outlining exactly what that guy's $20,000 gift did." So you know what happened the next year, right? He gave the full amount to that one soup kitchen or soup pantry. Um, and that just shows, I mean, 8 organizations and only one of them said how that gift made a difference. And you think, well, maybe that's just that one story. But I'm telling you over and over again in nonprofits across this country, they are not telling their donors how they made a difference. They're not thanking them well, and they're not telling them how they make a difference. And I'm telling you that if you want to stand out among all the other nonprofits in your area, in your community, your town, all you have to do is thank the donor well and report back on the impact that that gift will make, and you'll be light years ahead of any other organization out there. And that donor will be imprinted to you. They will love you for doing it. This is how it kind of looks. So this is the donor saying to you, "Look, you made me aware of some problem. You asked me to help and said it would make a difference. I believed you, gave what I could. You told me my gift made a difference. So I want to help again." This is the donor loop. This is how it works. Now, it goes awry when you say, "I believed you and I gave what I could, but you didn't tell me I made a difference." So that donor gave somewhere else and made a difference with another organization. So this is absolutely key. If you take nothing else back, this is so key to be successful in major gifts, reporting back to the donor what their gift did. Okay, number 7, loving accountability. You're like, what? What does this have to do with major gifts? It has everything to do with major gifts because we have seen major gift program after major gift program and MGO success versus not success based on, did the team who's working with major gifts embrace accountability? And did they allow others to hold them to the goals that they set, the plans that they made? I want to show you this chart, numbers, because this is so important. This is why accountability is so important. Scenario number 1, this kind of goes back to this is what a donor assessment that we did. If you look at scenario number 1, you see overall, this is how most organizations look at how effective their major gift program is. They look at 1 year of total revenue of 15.5 million. The next year, it was 18 million, or almost 19 million. So a 20% increase in growth from major donors. So they're thinking, hey, everything's great. We did great, no problem. But if you actually peel away the onion one layer, just one layer here, and you look at scenario number 2, so those donors that gave 15.56 million, those same donors the next year only gave 7.7 million, or they lost half of their overall value in 1 year. The only reason this program grew is because new donors or new donors who qualified as a major donor came in with $11 million worth, and that's why the overall program grew. But what we want to know is, what's happening with that 50%? Why did it drop off? What's happening with those donors? And who's accountable to actually work those donors well? So accountability is absolutely important. When we work with organizations and help manage their MGOs, we sit down with those MGOs every week to help them with their goals and their plans, and then we say this to them every week: did you do what you said you were going to do? And then we go through every one of the donors that they said they were going to do some move with. Did you actually do it? And what was the outcome of it? And then what are they planning to do the next week? It's absolutely essential that if you're the only one working on major gifts and you don't have a man, you've got to have somebody to hold you accountable to say, did you focus on this today? Did you actually do this work? We have found that when this element is not a part of major gift programs, it doesn't work. Growth goes way down. People are working all kinds of other things. They're doing events. They're getting people at the airport. You wouldn't believe the things that MGOs do if you don't hold them accountable and keep them focused on the task at hand. So accountability is absolutely essential. All right. Those are the 7 pillars. So important. Now, to actually make it all work within the organization. So if you're working those 7 pillars, that's great. But you also need a real culture of philanthropy within the whole organization to make it all work and all come together. So these are the questions I want to ask around building a culture of philanthropy. First, you yourself need to make sure you have your own head and heart right if you're going to do major gift work. So the first question I always ask new major gift people when we come in, do you really want to do this work? And tell me why you love working with major donors. Tell me that story. I want to know why you love it. And then I want to know, are you passionate about changing the world? And are you passionate about this mission that you're working with? And do you believe that change can actually happen with the investment that those donors are going to make in it? If everyone can answer yes, I'm like, yes, that's great. You're going to do awesome. If someone answers no to one of these questions, then we have to have a discussion like, do you really want to be here? Major gift work is so hard. It is incredibly hard. It's a lot of work. You're working 6 a.m. in the morning, sometimes till 10 a.m. at night. You're out with dinners and donors and events, and it's hard work. If you don't believe in it, if you don't have passion for it, you're going to die out. So this is the first thing I always say. Do you yourself have this passion? Then I want to know is, how do you view your donors? And I always say, do you view your donor as part of your mission just as much as you do with what you're doing to change the world, your organization's changing the world? Do you really see your donors as your mission as well? Do you see that working with those donors is going to change their life and that you have a hand in actually helping them change the world? Do you see that? A lot of times I ask, are donors mentioned in your organization's mission statement? I've only heard of one or two so far of the hundreds I've talked to that say they have donors written into their mission statement. And I say to them, do you believe you're that bridge? Do you believe in impact, that the donor wants to know about impact over your ratios? And then I ask, do you ask donors? Because if you believe that donors are your mission, you will ask them, because your donors, again, they want to give. You're actually doing your donors a favor by asking them to give to your organization, because all the research has already been proven. Donors who give are happier, healthier, and wealthier than people that don't. So why wouldn't you want to do that great thing for your donor and ask them to give? The next thing I want to ask you about is around leadership. So is your leadership passionate about philanthropy? Many times you see NGOs, they say, well, it's kind of I just don't like asking donors for gifts, or I don't want to, it's really uncomfortable for me. I don't like asking donors for money. That is death to an organization. You as the development director or the MGO, if you don't have an executive director or a CEO who loves to get in front of donors, or maybe doesn't love it but knows the importance of it and will do it and get out in front of a donor and ask them for support, if you don't have that, that organization will flounder, because it will send a message to everyone else: this is not important. You've got to have support from your CEO and executive director. So, every one of your executive directors or CEOs, they need to have their own portfolio, and you need to help manage that for them. And then, the other thing is, does 100% of your board give? If your board isn't, if not every one of your board isn't giving, that's the problem. Foundations want to know that your board's giving if they want to give. So every one of your board members have to give. I don't care if it's $10. They need to show that they believe in what you're doing so much that they will give to the organization. Or else, how can you ask others? Then I want to know about your own story. Are you telling the donor the right story? Do you know the story of your organization? Do you know the story of the need? Are your mission, vision, and values, are they displayed at your nonprofit? Do you have events where you're engaging donors and others and bringing them on and talking about the mission of the organization? Storytelling is so important in an organization, and knowing the story, knowing how to tell it right with the emotion that grips a donor and makes them want to give, is so important. And then I want to know, are you expressing the need correctly? Can you describe the need? There are so many people that want to avoid the messiness of the need, or that there's a need at all. They just want to go, well, here's what we can do. Here's what we do as an organization. We're so successful. We do all this. But what about the need? What are we trying to address? What are we trying to accomplish? You've got facts. You have those. But you have the causes of the need. What's happening that there is this need? And what would happen if the need wasn't met? Those are so important to know. And it's all part around telling that story and knowing that need. Um, I know so many good MGOs who are great at being able to take the donor to the need. Whether there's whether it's an organization that's working on water wells in Africa or working in the inner city of Memphis or wherever. Um, Being able to take the donor to the need and help them feel that need, to smell it, to understand it is so important. You yourself who are taking that donor have to be comfortable with that and doing that. That's what's going to build an incredible culture of philanthropy. Now, I want to end with the 6 ways that the nonprofits fail. So your major gift program will not work if you're looking at programs over your people. If program and process is important over the people that you're serving and your donors, you're going to fail. If you're putting money over the relationship, if you're chasing money over a relationship with a donor, you're not going to be successful. If you're getting things done versus doing the right things, there's so many people that I say, oh, I'm so busy, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I say, but is that the right stuff you should be doing? Is it furthering your relationship with your donors? Nonprofits that focus on overhead versus impact. What happens here when a nonprofit is fearful about just reporting on overhead, they don't take risks, they don't invest in new ideas, um, they don't report to donors. They'll pay people terribly, and you will not succeed. When a nonprofit focuses on power, or an executive focuses on power and control versus effectiveness, you will not succeed. I see this a lot, where CEOs get in their head that it's just about them and what they're going to do, not about is the actual nonprofit effective at what they're doing. And then, is the nonprofit focusing on growth versus greatness? There's a lot of leaders that are out there. We've just got to grow by this amount and this amount. And we want to grow over year. But is that the right thing? Or do we need to step back and is the quality of what we're doing right? And are we being great at what we do versus growing at what we do? So, in summary, this is what we talked about today and how to think about major gifts. We talked about the problem to overcome in your donor file, which is that value attrition and donor retention. We talked about those 7 pillars of major gifts, and we talked about the need to have a culture of philanthropy to support major gifts and make that successful. And then those 6 reasons why the nonprofits do fail, and what it takes to be successful. I know that all of you can do this work. If you're passionate about the mission, if you're passionate about donors, you will do well. It's just a matter of having the tools. And hopefully this kind of whetted your appetite for understanding what are the right tools that you need. And if you need more, we've got all kinds of resources for you at Veritas. If you went to veritasgroup.com, you can sign up for our blog. We write 3 days a week, all about major gifts and how to do your job better. We've got a book out. It's not just about the money. You can find that on Amazon. You literally can read this book and start a major gift, know how to start a major gift program. And we've got over 21 different white papers, like I said, on everything from tiering your donors to creating plans to understanding the traits of great MGOs and how to hire. There's so much good stuff out there. And we actually then also have a marketing impact chart to help you actually craft your own plans and goals and strategies. All of this we have available on our website. And it's all free, and it's all about trying to help you do better at major gifts. So that's the end of my time. And Greg,
Terrific.
if you're there, you
Yes.
might have some good time, and then you have some time. You want to do some stuff, and then maybe later take questions.
Yep. We've got a handful of questions. And for people who have not asked questions yet and they want to, please go ahead. Hopefully, you all can see my screen. I think you can. I'm going to just give you a quick 1-2 about what MarketSmart does. We basically support what Jeff does and what gift officers do all around the world, in fact, in 4 countries. So it starts with metrics really quickly at fundraisingreportcard.com. You would be able to see your 80/20 and who was giving last year, who isn't. It's a great visualization tool that's 100% free. There is a paid version, but you get a lot of great stuff free. You just upload some data here, and there's tutorials about how to get the data we need. It's only three fields from your database, which is the donor ID, donation date, and the gift amount. And when you do that, then you get a bunch of key performance indicators, and you get to see your growth rate, and can sort it by date. And in fact, here I'll show you real quick, is that the dates can be changed. You can also get rid of certain levels. You can make charts for your board. You can share them with your board. You can, there's so many things to do in here. I can't really completely express how much, but it's a fun little invention I created to help people understand their metrics very quickly. All right, so that's number one of what we do. The other thing that we do around here is that we help gift officers really figure out who they should be talking to. So we help you, I guess I would call it the ultimate lead qualification tool. It's not about wealth screening, but rather we have a donor survey platform and then an artificial intelligence system that helps to cultivate leads. So the survey generates leads. Our artificial intelligence and automated email system drips emails based on how people answer questions. So this kind of goes back to what Jeff was talking about, is find out what they care about, what programs they care about, find out why they care, and then cultivate the relationship over time. Often we generate way more leads to build caseloads than you can handle. So what happens is we'll use the artificial intelligence automated drip to cultivate those over time as you're building your caseloads and meeting with people. So these drips move people through the consideration process, and then they actually we track major donors online with how they're engaging with these drips. So what it looks like is kind of, you've got the survey, you got the artificial intelligence, and then all these drips are happening, and we drive them back online to landing pages and whatnot, or maybe there's little campaigns going on, and these drip over time so that you can track these folks and see what they're doing online as they're educating themselves. And when their score gets high enough, then you know who to reach out to. So this is just a great way to take a big list, even if it's been well screened or if it hasn't, to help you determine who's really engaged right now, so you can zero in on the best prospects and make yourself much, much more efficient. Um, just give you a real quick look at our dashboard, but otherwise, if you want to learn more, the best way is to just set up a demonstration with us. But our dashboard will show all different levels of consideration, people who've left a legacy gift, for instance, how people rank your charity, if it's at the top of the list or not. Red basically means they're hot. That means they've been clicking recently, and you can zero in on an individual and see their responses to the survey. And of course, the more they tell you, the more it helps you, especially things like if they tell you they have a donor advised fund or would like to talk to a gift officer or have appreciated assets that they'd like to give. It's amazing what people will tell us on these surveys. And then it helps you build, visits and perimeter visits. I guess I should say anchor visits and perimeter visits. And the system provides tons of reports for your leadership and your board. So That is the super quickest explanation of what MarketSmart does. And with that, Alvin will pass the power back over to Jeff. I'm not sure, Jeff, you're going to need to show anything, but perhaps we'll do that. And I'm going to start with the questions. And I want to thank Jeff for being here. I've seen this presentation before, and I got to tell you, I learn something new every time. So I really appreciate you doing that. And a lot of people have asked, are the slides going to be made available? So I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I wonder, do we share the slides or do we just
Yeah,
share? Okay,
absolutely.
we can share the slides, everybody, and we're going to, MarketSmart will send you the recording of this in a couple of weeks. Okay. So the first question is from Esther. Thank you, Esther,
Uh-huh.
for participating. And she says, we have one single donor that gives so much, capitalized, that
Yeah,
I'm constantly scared that we'll lose them. It will have
yeah.
such a major impact. What to do?
Well, number one, making sure that you really maintain that relationship with the one donor. So that's number one. But obviously, you need to diversify and you need to look at your donor file and start cultivating those donors on there that have the potential to be major donors. Um, because, and then, I don't know what the relationship is with this one big donor, and I'm sure they don't want to be the only solution. They might have connections along with your board of other people who might be passionate about your nonprofit. So I would definitely start moving towards expanding the number of donors there because you're right. Something happens to that donor or they no longer like what you're doing. It could be devastating. But you definitely want to start expanding that group of donors that you have. And maybe that, as I said, maybe that donor has others that they could introduce you to because they don't want all the burden on themselves to fund the organization.
Yeah, giving clubs are becoming popular among wealthy people. So I would agree. They might actually enjoy the community aspect of that and
Yeah.
the social aspect. So that's a great point.
Mhm.
Next question is from Norma, and
Uh-huh.
she says, "This is interesting. Is it realistic to expect major donors to continually donate funds over and over again? What are the incentives for them to do so?" I have my answer,
The
but I'll
yeah,
listen to yours.
yeah. The answer is absolutely. And the if you're doing a great job of cultivating, that means thanking, reporting back to that donor how their gifts are making a difference, and constantly inspiring them with what you're doing and what the other programs and projects there are that fall into their passion and interests, they will want to give again. Um, we see this over and over. If it's done well, as you saw that circle of here, I made you aware of something, I asked you, you gave, I thanked, and I reported back, and I keep doing that. That is not something you do once. That's something you're constantly doing, and you might be asking more than once. That's the other thing. Donors aren't going to just give once per year. If you have a need and they have passion towards it, and you're doing all the good stuff you're supposed to be doing with that donor, they'll keep giving.
I agree.
So
I'm gonna add 2 cents to it. Is that
yeah,
the major donors? Well, for any donor, it just plain feels good to give,
yeah,
and it
yeah,
feels good to hear about the impact.
right.
So they're gonna keep giving because you made them feel good.
That's right. That's right.
All right. So next was talking about, this is going back to the very beginning when you were talking about retention,
Yeah,
looking at the data. And Gary asks, could that be because there's no longevity in the MG office? So I guess that he's referring to turnover.
right. Yes. That's a yes, that goes to it. Yeah. Where that's part of it. So what's happening in our industry is that a major gift officer comes on board and they cultivate that relationship for 2 years and they really start to build trust and all of that and then they leave. and then they don't pass that donor off well. And so now all of a sudden the donor, without even knowing that the MGO has left, now has somebody else calling them that they don't know. And now they got to reestablish a relationship and build that. So, um, yes, it's a contributing factor. And it's something that CEOs and executive directors need to look at. How can we keep a good MGO? Um, and we deal with that all the time, but it's definitely a factor in why donors are not giving year over year.
Indeed. Okay, so we've got a couple more, and it looks like even more are rolling in. So I hope you'll stay with
Okay,
us. Uh,
sure.
so Joan says, when I tiered my donors, there was very little difference in revenue between A and B level donors. Very few A and about 5 times as many Bs. Revenue was actually higher. I guess she means by total revenue.
Yeah,
So how
right.
do I allocate my time?
Well, I think probably I would say that you probably haven't tiered your donors correctly. So your A should have the most, basically it's about half of your revenue comes from your A level donor. And then we've seen the Bs about 25% or 30% of your revenue, and then it goes down from there, C level. So perhaps you don't have a C level donor, I'm not sure, but you you want to make sure that your A level is definitely going to make up um, most of your revenue because that's where you're going to spend most of your time. So perhaps what you've done is you haven't tiered it correctly because half of your time should be spent on A level donors.
Got it.
We see it over and over. Every file we've done, it'll work that way if you've tiered them correctly.
All right. And Jerry asks, and I think this is coming from the beginning also, is what's YMAD? Was that
That's you made a difference. That's
oh,
reporting on impact.
okay, okay.
Why?
All right.
That's a yeah. It's an acronym for you made a difference.
Got it. Also, and there was another one where Helen asked about NGO versus MGO,
Right.
and NGO is non-governmental organization, and
Right.
MGO is major gift officer.
Correct. Yeah.
Great. Helen
So
again asks, any tips for building trust with donors in your database that you don't know?
yeah, start to get to know them. That's the number one thing. It's like call them up, set up meetings with them, and sit down with them and find out who they are and why they give to your organization.
Yep.
That is very simple, but it's true. Donors want to be known. And so, you know, it's your job to find out who they are. And along with that, it's develop understanding, making sure you know your own programs well, that you can talk with credibility about your organization when you actually meet with them, that you know more about them because you've done some research on them. All of those things lead to building trust with that donor. But number one is get in front of them, start talking to them.
Now, I'm going to throw out there because I know, of course, getting the appointment is about 80% of the job. If you can get the
Right,
appointment, maybe it's even more. If you can get that appointment, you're over a tremendous hump. But
right,
from the Market Smart perspective, you've got to build a heck of a lot of trust before you can even get the appointment, so that they'll
right.
give you the appointment. And that's why we recommend providing offers, including opportunities for feedback. Let them
Yep,
take donor surveys,
yeah,
give them the right kind of impact reporting and thank you notes. That'll build trust for sure.
exactly. Yep,
All right, the more questions keep coming in, so
great.
we might be here a little while.
Good. This is
Jeff
fun.
Jeffrey asks, we are a Catholic high school. Each week at the advancement staff meeting, we end up with prayer that
Uh-huh.
reminds us to reverence the sacred space where our donors and mission meet.
That's awesome.
Yep.
That's what I was talking about. That's the whole idea of understanding that you are the bridge between the donor wanting to change the world and the need that you have to do that. that is, I I'm not a religious. I wouldn't say I'm religious, but I'm a spiritual person, and there is a spiritual thing that happens when you do that. It just happens to donors and to you as the person who is that bridge.
Next is from Gary asking, how can you really accelerate your major gifts in a small shop?
Okay. Well, whether it's in a small shop or in a large shop, the way to accelerate that is to start taking putting the structure to your major gifts first off. So all the things that I just talked about, and what I mean by a structure is that you've got qualified donors, that you've got a revenue goal to, and a plan to actually achieve that goal. That's if you have that, then it's just a matter of working that plan. You would not believe how programs will take off and major gifts will start coming in when you actually put together a structure to make it happen. Um, Before that, people are, oh, I'll just go out to lunch with this donor and I'll do this with this donor, and there's no real structure or plan to get the money or to build the relationship. And once you put that plan together, you will start to see it take off. Believe me. Every client we've worked with, every major gift officer we've worked with to help them put together a plan and then work the plan produces a ton more revenue than they ever had before. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But
So
you got to put together that structure.
yeah, and then work the plan. I agree.
That's right.
So now we've got, in addition to questions, we have compliments. So first of all, Jeff's married. Second of all, sounds like Jeff is a very patient, compassionate person. Thanks for
Oh,
a very, very informative webinar. And let's see, and then we move. That's from Norma. Also, Karen says that she just ordered your book on Amazon. So maybe Jeff, you want to
awesome.
give a shout out of the title again, real quick, so others can
Yeah,
do that.
it's not just about the money.
It's not just about the money. I've read it. It's awesome. Get it. Karen also asks, our donors are all over the United States. Can you do an ask the first time you meet them in person, or do you need to meet a couple times before the ask? This
That's a good
will
question.
impact our travel budget.
Yeah, that's a good question. Sometimes you can. More often than not, usually the first time you meet a donor, um, it's to get to know that donor and to understand their passion and interests on a face-to-face. But I have seen major gift officers who have built a good relationship with a donor on the phone and on email, and then they've done such a good job with that that when they do visit, they can solicit that donor for the first time that they see them face to face. So it's not impossible, but all the work has to be done well beforehand to be able to do that. If they're local, more often than not, you're going to want to see the donor one, two, three, who knows how many times. It depends on the donor to build that trust with you. So, but it's possible.
Mhm.
It's all about all the work you've done prior to that face-to-face meeting.
Great. Nancy asks, do you have a white paper or presentation on prospecting, for example, how to qualify, what to look for, and then what to do?
Yes, we have a white paper. It's just all about qualifying donors. So if you went on our website, you'll be able to see that. Absolutely.
Um, Gina says, MGOs turn over so much. In
Yes.
reality, how long does it take to gain the trust of a current donor when they meet a new major gift officer?
So this is a good question because it's really, so taking the MGO out of the equation for a second, if you're an executive director or a development director, what you want to make sure is that donors are trusting the organization first and foremost. Yes, they need to trust the MGO, but it really is about building the relationship with the donor to the organization, not to an individual. So that's number one. So overall, if that needs to be your philosophy. So an MGO, obviously a good one, is going to know how to do that well. They know that it's not about them. Yes, they're working the plan and they're developing a relationship of trust, but it's all about helping the donor see the organization as the thing that they're giving to in the mission, not them. So if in the best world, if an MGO is leaving, that another MGO or the development director picking up the relationship should be easily able to come to the, work with that MG or work with that major donor, to work seamlessly, and continue the trust that they've been building, because it's all centered around the organization's mission and the projects and programs they're doing to change the world, not about some individual MGO. So that's first and foremost. If you're doing that well, I've seen it where you've had MGOs coming in and out every 2 or 3 years, but it doesn't matter because the organization has done such a great job of cultivating that donor.
Terrific. All right, here. These are the best questions ever, by the way. So I'm
Cool.
I'm thrilled
I
to
know.
just.
I'm loving
I
this.
mean,
We
I
could go.
almost want.
I could go all day.
I want to make an ebook out of these questions. Okay, this is from. Gosh, I hope I don't mispronounce your name. Karen, I think it's Karen. Is it a lost cause to try engaging a person who you know is charitable minded and has capacity, but you realize your mission isn't one of their passions?
Yes, that I would not pursue that donor.
Okay.
Those two have to come together. I mean, just because someone has that's where I go back to that only a third of donors who maybe have given you a gift that might be labeled a major gift want to relate to you. That's part of that. You know that they may they may have the capacity to give, but they just don't have the inclination or the passion for your mission to give a really big gift, or to even give a gift. I would not pursue it. No, you have plenty of other donors that already love what you do. Those are the people you should go after.
And next, I'm happy to say that Art at the Salvation Army is on here, and he, thank you, Art. He says, we just used the donor survey product with MarketSmart. It brought us a number
Ah,
of leads and new disclosures. Thanks. So,
awesome.
yes, I know. Thank you, Art.
Nice little endorsement. Good.
um, okay, do I this oh yeah, okay, we already asked, do I really need to be passionate? Oh no, I didn't get this one. From Jamie. Wow. Okay, do I really need to be passionate about the cause to do well as an NGO? What if
Yes.
it's important? What if it's an important cause and a good job for, I guess, a good job for her, but I don't feel passion for the cause?
Well, I believe that you can do the job, but I don't believe that you will be great at the job. If you don't have passion for this particular mission, donors will see right through it. And that comes out in how you talk to a donor, how you interact with them over the course of the year. If you yourself are not passionate about it, it's not going to come out. Like for this, like I think you could tell from this presentation, I love talking about major gifts. You know it because I have this excitement about me. It comes through my voice and it makes you want to kind of listen to it, right? Now think if I really wasn't passionate about major gifts and I was doing this same webinar, I wouldn't have the same joy. You'd be able to tell. And it's the same thing with a donor will be able to tell from an MGO who doesn't have that passion. I believe you can do the job, but you're not going to do it great. And who wants to be in a job that you don't have joy in, that you don't feel it? It could be a great job, it might be a great offer, but if a great mission, but if you yourself don't feel it, move on to something that does bring you joy and that you have passion, because this work is way too hard to do without passion. It really is.
I agree 100%. Keith asks, how important is the location you set up for donor meetings?
Um, well, I think it's the what's important is that it's set up by that the donor feels comfortable wherever you are. It could be in their home, it could be at your organization, it could be at a restaurant or a diner somewhere. It's wherever the donor agrees that that's the best place for them to
Yeah, and
make that.
one thing about that I find interesting is I when you go to a restaurant, you're constantly interrupted by waiters.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to me, that's not a great place. And
Yeah, I
what's
try to steer away from any of that if you can.
yeah,
Unless the donor says, "Hey, I'm going to be in this part. I'm going to be here, and I'm going to be right at this restaurant. Let's just meet for lunch." That'd be perfect for me. So
yep.
then I would do it. But if you have the opportunity to say, "Hey, I would love to meet you at your home," or "I would love to take you and show you around where we are," and then take them to another room to ask them, or maybe your CEO's there, and you can bring the CEO in and talk. That might be better, but yeah, I agree with you. Restaurants aren't the best because there's always outside things that could go on.
Next, from Eileen, what is the best? I'm sorry. How do you determine what a major gift is? Is there a formula?
There isn't really a formula except for one thing that we do is we always start at 1,000 plus cum to understand how many potential major donors there are in a file. But if you're a smaller organization, I'd even go down to $100 cum. It all depends on how many donors you have and where they kind of fit. You can kind of create your own donor pyramid by just looking at all the donors you have and then look at cum giving totals for the past couple of years, and you'll be able to see kind of where does your donor file come in. And for some organizations, it's 500, some are 1,000, 10,000. A lot of universities I work with, they don't look at major donor, they don't count a major donor unless they can get 50,000. So and I've heard of 100,000. So it all depends on the size of your organization and your own donor file. Your donors will tell you what's a major donor.
Okay, we're nearing the end here. Couple more. As a development director in a small shop, I have 1.5 people to help me, mostly with events and marketing, and I have
Yeah,
lots of plates spinning. So, what's your
yeah,
recommendation for percentage of time I should spend on major donors given this reality?
right. So in your case, because I know what it will do to help grow your overall program, I want you to allocate at least 25% of your time on major gifts. And then from that, that means you're really going to be able to handle about 35 major donors. So the key though is that you've got to really stick to that 25% of your time. And believe me, it will pay off because this is your major donors are the ones that bring in the net revenue to your organization. So if you can start devoting that 25%, and then you'll see the success of that, then you might say, I need to hire someone else to take over something else from me so that I can spend 50 to 75 and then eventually 100% of your time, or someone's spending 100%. But start at 25%.
Got it. Um, okay, I'm just going to do a couple more and then I think we're going to wrap it up, everybody. Surprisingly, there's still about 100 people listening, so thank you all. We had almost 500 registrants, so this was very popular. Thank you all again for sticking with us. The last couple of questions here. Let's see. Forgive me. I have to scroll through. There's a number of people who said you must have passion. You need to get
Yeah,
passion.
yeah,
Passion is so important. So there's like a lot of people chiming in about the passion. And
that's good. Good.
so this one might. What is plus Q?
Plus Q.
I don't remember talking about plus Q, so I'm not sure what that's coming from. I think we'll just have to
No.
Yeah. Well, with that, that's kind of a clunker of. Oh no, no, no. Here's a better one. That's a okay. Jennifer asks, can you comment on how our own personal philanthropy can influence our work as gift officers?
Yeah, it can. In fact, if you're a major gift officer or in fundraising at all, you yourself should be giving substantially as you can, because you yourself need to understand what it feels like to be a donor. Because if you yourself are a donor and you experience what your donors are experiencing, you will have much more empathy and compassion for your donors because you yourself will experience some of the same things that your donors are. So I've heard of folks who, they've given to their university and their university treats them terribly, and they're asking them the wrong questions and they're not doing the right things. And I say, okay, what can you learn from your own experience of giving that you can change with the donors that you're working with and use that um, in your own work. So it's important, and it's also important because if you're gonna if you're gonna inspire, ask people to give, you yourself should also give. I really believe that, and I don't say you have to give at their same levels. Obviously, you're not getting the same revenue as some of your major donors, obviously, but um, giving does the soul well. It does so much good for you to give, and to experience what that's like, you need to experience that so that you will want to ask other donors to feel what you feel when you give your gifts.
I agree 1,000%, and I think giving becomes habitual because it feels so good.
Yeah,
In fact, a couple of years ago, I kept imploring my staff to try it, and
yeah,
finally, about a year and a half ago, I realized, you know what? I'm going to match. Whenever they make a gift, they just should show our bookkeeper the receipt,
yeah.
and we make a donation to the same organization that is equal to the donation they made, and that
That's
inspired a
awesome.
lot of people to give, which helps us get that kind of empathy. And if you're going to be
Yeah,
in this business, you have got to see what it feels like to be on the other side. Even if you're only given $50, you'll be surprised at how crappy you're treated by your favorite charity, who sells your name to 20 other charities and so on, or forgets to thank you. So
yeah,
you gotta feel that.
yeah,
And with that, that's going to wrap up this presentation. We're down to 80 people still on here, so I want to thank you all for sticking around till the end. Please, I should have mentioned this, but there will be a survey at the very end. You can give us marks, mostly Jeff. You're going to be grading Jeff on this, and there were some other questions there. So please, please, please take the survey. Let us know how we're doing. And with that, Jeff, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure,
yeah.
and
This has been so much fun.
we will do it again.
We got to keep doing this.
Let's
We
do it
should go
all
on the
night.
road, Greg.
Yeah.
Let's go on the road.
All
Be
right.
fun.
Have a great day. All righty. Bye bye.
All right. See you.